I'm Mary Matz from Twisted Yarns, and in this video I'd like to teach you some short rowing techniques by making the easy lined slipper. The pattern for the easy lined slipper dates back to over 50 years. I know I've seen it, I heard it verbally back then, and I've also seen it mimeographed, typed, handwritten, all kinds of variations. And it's always been modified just a little by the knitters as they go, because people like to change things. And I did too. So my contribution to this particular pattern is that I added detailed instructions so that every beginner can actually have a successful pair of slippers when you're done. The other thing that I did was I added time-saving techniques to it so that experienced knitters will find some nuggets in this old favorite. You can download the pattern at twistedyarns.com. It's for free because I'm not taking any claim to this pattern, but I want you to enjoy it and I want to encourage machine knitters everywhere. One of the fun things in this particular part one is that we are going to do and make the actual slipper part of the slipper. Then you can embellish it. Now, traditionally, it was embellished with a button, a bow, or a pom-pom. But I prefer adding flowers, like my I-cord flower, or the machine knit pom-pom, which also looks really adorable. Then, of course, I got a little inspired as I was doing these projects, and I said, bunnies, Easter is coming up. So I actually, on the next video following this, if you hang in there, you'll see the bunny slippers, and they're just adorable. And there's some special techniques buried in there, and it takes a long time to explain, so it's a second video. Anyway, let's get started. Set the tension dial to 4.1 and the carriage to knit. For this demo, I'm doing a child size. Pull out 27 needles total. That's 13 on the left and 14 right of 0. I pull mine all the way out to the hold position. I'm going to E-wrap the needles, but before I do, I want to leave a lengthy yarn tail for later use. To get the right length, hold the yarn over the width of the needles. Using the needles as a guide, measure 6 lengths equal to the width of the needles, and then for good measure, add a 7th. You won't want to skimp on this. At this point, I take a clothespin and I clip it on the end so I know where I'm starting. And then I'm going to very quickly do an E-wrap. Okay, thread up my machine. I'm going to knit a row. That moves my carriage to the left side. You want to start with your carriage on the right side. Now, just for fun, I'm going to be putting some weights on my edges and probably one in the middle to start. Okay, now the concept of short rowing is that you start holding stitches in hold position. So I'm going to change my carriage to hold position. Now, if you have a different machine, it's a different lever or a different something or another, but there's usually a hold position on it. So look in your manual. So what that hold position means is if the needles are in the hold position, which on my brother's bulky is the E position, they will not knit. Okay? But when you bring the needles out, and I'm going to bring the needle out closest to the carriage to hold. In that position, this needle will not knit, but the yarn will wrap around it automatically because I'm doing it this particular way, with choosing the needle closest to the carriage. Okay? So, all right. So, we brought this needle out. Now, as I knit across, you'll see the yarn wrapped over the top of it. So now I'm going to go to this side and bring this needle out because it's the one closest to the carriage, because I'm going to be slowly tapering it in to make the toe. Now, this gets kind of tedious after a little bit, but we're going to be quickly knitting this. Now, I'm going to continue in this fashion all the way until I have, oh, let's see, for this size it would be 7 stitches left. Now, I just started talking and I said, where am I? Now, if you look at your stitch on this side, did I take that needle out yet? No, because this needle is the last one knit. So I'm bringing it out. That's how you tell. And I'm also pulling down with my hand. It's a lot easier to keep the tension on the center part by using your hands, and you'll see in a minute how this builds up on each other. So we're going to continue. How many do I have left? 8. This one comes out. So now I have 7 left, but I need to finish the repeat and knit that row. Okay, don't pull it out and say, oh, I have 7 left. No, you got to knit that last row. Now we're going to be returning needles into work. And when we do this, we're going to do it on the side opposite the carriage. So in this case, now, you can't just push this needle all the way back down to work position. You have to return it to upper work position. Otherwise, if you pushed it all the way back, everything that's on the needle, because the stitches are behind the latch, will just fall off in your lap. Not a good thing. Okay, so we put it into upper work position and we knit 1 row. And likewise, we go over to the other side, the side opposite the carriage, and return it to upper work position. Now this is where it gets interesting because I'm creating the toe, a little pocket. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're putting downward pressure right here. Downward pressure. And we're going to do this until we go until all of our stitches are in work position. Okay, I just returned that one to work position, but I have to knit across. I'm going to take these off because they're going to fall on my toes in about a minute. I'm leaving this one in place for now. So now we've just finished the toe. See the pocket for the toe, like your foot could go in there? Okay, now we're going to begin the heel section, the heel shaping. So, what did I say earlier? On the side next to the carriage, that's when you take the stitches out of work. So we just took one out, and we're going to repeat this process just like we did the toe, but this time we're going to go down to 5 stitches because heels are narrower than toes. I'm at 6, so I have 5 left, plus I need to knit this row. So I have my 5 left. So now, on the side opposite the carriage, I'm going to start putting them back into work by moving them into upper work position. And just so you know, when you're doing that in upper work position, watch what happens. It then goes into work position after it knits that stitch. And then my last row of knitting. Okay, now, if you look at what we have here, can you all see this? You have a toe and a heel. Now, at this point, let me just double check my reference point, because there's things that are going to happen right now that are kind of important. Okay, first off, we shaped our heel. Now we're going to cut our main color, And this time you don't have to leave a lot of yarn, just enough to weave in. So I'm going to hang this up here, and I'm going to bring out, a bunch of needles, 5, 10, 10 or 12. And I'm going to take this yarn tail and I'm going to wrap it up and down so that it's like laced in and out of these stitches. Okay. Clothespins are really handy to have on hand to put a little bit of tension on that yarn end. Now, my machine is set to hold, so you need to be aware that in this case, these are all supposed to knit off. So these need to be returned to upper working position so that they get knit on the next row. Now, that's the first thing that we do here. What that does is that we don't have any weaving in to do at the end of this little slipper. Okay, so now that we've got this ready to go, we're going to change our tension to 3.1, and we're going to thread up with the lining color. Oops. Okay. I'm going to put my clip on there. Another clothespin, they're very handy. Okay. And I'm going to knit one row. Everything knit off as planned. Now I can take this off and trim it if I'd like. It will be buried on the inside, but because it's a foot, you don't want extra stuff under your foot, little things, little strands that can ball up. Okay, now, before we move on, we're going to do the exact same thing with this yarn tail. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Actually, yeah, that's right. Okay, and now I'm going to return them back to upper work position because I'm doing that just by pure habit. Just move them all back to upper work position. Now I'm going to assess and start the shaping again. But this time, this is the toe, this is the heel. The next part that's going to be done is going to be another heel. So we'll go down to 5 stitches, and with the needle that is on the same side as the carriage, the first needle, we're taking that out of work into hold position. Okay? So we're doing a lot on this row, but it's important to do it all at the same time. Okay, so this one's in hold. This one is now going to come into hold, and we also have just woven in all of our ends. Done. No more finishing after the fact. Okay, so now I brought out this one already. I'm going to knit one more, and we're going to repeat this whole thing again. And the reason I do my tension is 3-1 is so that the lining is smaller than the outside of the foot of the slipper. I'm down to 5, but with that last knit row. Okay? Now, on the side opposite the carriage, we're going to start bringing them back into work. And I am putting a significant amount of downward pressure on this middle section, just so you know. And you've got to be careful. Don't get your hands up here because that hurts when you hit it. So keep your hands down below that frame. I put it into work. knit my last row. Okay, so what do you think we're going to be doing now? We're going to be putting things back into hold. So we're going to bring this needle back into hold position so I can start the shaping for the toe. Now the toe has 7 stitches in the middle. So here's our first one. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then knit my last row. Now we're going to continue on this toe and start returning on the opposite side from the carriage. You take them out on the same side as the carriage and put them back in on the opposite side. Now, normally you would knit from here to there to finish the lining. We're not going to do that. We're going to cut our yarn. And the reason we're going to cut our yarn is because we're going to weave this end in. It's just easy. I bring them all the way out to hold because it's just easier than bringing them out to upper work position to get this weaving done. Let's bring out another needle. Over the top. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to take that long end that well, first off, we're going to move these back into upper work because I do want them to knit off on this last row. Okay? And with my little tool, I'm just going to pick up that one little loop there and put it on the end needle. The first loop of the purple or the main color. Okay? And I can take my pin off, my clothespin off now. Bring my carriage over here and thread up with this long end. What hanging this end does is it takes the pressure off of this yarn when I first go to do it. So we got a lot going on this row. Okay? In fact, I'm going to push that stitch behind the latch so I know it'll knit off. Okay, very good. All right, and I'm going to hand feed this and knit across the entire row. All right, now this is our last chance to cut this yarn tail. If you haven't cut your yarn tails and trimmed them, I should say, this is the row. That would be it, because you've now made the outside and the inside of this. Okay? And we've woven in all the ends. The only end we have is this one. Oh, all right. Now we're closing it. So, you can start at either end, but we are going to pick up the last row of E-wraps. Just the E-wrap stitches. And if you're handy enough, you can do 2 at a time. In the center, it's not so difficult to do 2 at a time. But sometimes on the ends, it's kind of difficult because this is pulling in on the edges. Now, I kind of like to bring those all out, flip my carriage to knit so it doesn't hold them, and then we can just proceed on. Okay, so I'm pushing them all back Okay. I'm going to set my tension back to 4.1 so that I'm at my outside tension once again. You could go up a little bit more if you really wanted to, but you know, whatever. Now, I'm going to knit one more row in the main color. Thread my yarn through my yarn needle, and I'm then, whoops, one second. It's easier to pull everything out to hold at this point, and then bring this toward the edge, okay, on the edge that you're working. Now the yarn is coming off of this end, but I found that you can actually go to the opposite end, because what I'm doing is I'm taking all these stitches off onto my needle. Now let's just talk about why did I change the lining color one row before the lining was completed. And the reason is, if I didn't do that, you would have colorful little dots all along this last row. And I don't want colorful little dots showing through my nice outside of my slipper. So I stopped that row early. It gave me an opportunity, number one, not to have the dots, but it also gave me the opportunity to weave the end in very neatly of the lining, which minimizes my work when I'm all done. Now, I'm pulling up a little bit here. So I'm just popping these right off the latches. Okay? Now, I'm just tucking in my lining, and I've threaded my needle. So now all I'm doing is pulling this closed. And I'm doing it slowly and hopefully in frame. There you go. It is now a slipper. And of course, I'm going to take my darning needle, and you pull it up as tight as you can. Some people have been able to do, they pull this through far enough so that you get two strands through that to join. I don't like to do that, because then I end up with three ends that I have to finish when I'm all done. The one that went through and the two that when I cut it off my needle. So I like to do it this way. But it's your preference how you want to do it. Anyway, you're going to go around this a few more times until this closes up. And you have a nice little slipper. In part 2, we take the easy lined slipper and learn to embellish it, turning it into my bunny slippers. That part came totally out of my imagination. So I hope you stick around and enjoy the next in the series too. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos. Happy machine knitting!